Hello, welcome again to FAIRtax Power Radio. I'm Bob Paxton.
I'm Bob Scarborough.
And we are the FAIRtax guys. In case you missed our episode last week, no, I did not have a close encounter with a blowtorch. This is skin cancer treatment. And hopefully by the time we record again, we did 2 shows in one recording session. So I look as bad this week as I did the previous week on the show, because we recorded both of them at the same time. But hopefully next week, which will be 2 weeks after we're recording this one, will be good. So
yeah, that'll be good. Yeah. Hey, by the way, the Ocala Tech called and they want their shop vac welding equipment back. You know what I mean?
Oh, they do. Oh,
Yeah.
you're referring to my new little background here. Now, this was a funny little meme that I found. And originally on the left, the straight track was labeled husband's brain, and the mess of trackage on the right side was labeled wife's brain. I kind of repurposed that to the FAIRtax. Of course, I don't really know whose picture this actually is. If this is your picture and you object to me using it, I'll take it down. But I just thought it was funny to differentiate the FAIRtax and the income tax that way, because I always like trains.
You never know which track you're on with the income tax. With the FAIRtax, straight down the middle.
Yep, you're straight down the middle, and with the one on the right, you're not in control of how those switches are set. Somebody else is setting those switches for you. So if you're driving the train through that yard, you have no clue what path you're going to take. Whatever the dispatcher wants to do for you is where you'll end up. And so with the income tax, how much tax you pay is what the government wants out of you, and you have very little control over how much you pay with the income tax, and that is totally different with a FAIRtax.
And there are more people than you would imagine at the switches on the income tax.
Mm-hmm.
So you might end up on 3 different tracks without knowing you ever switched one.
Yeah, and if we came back next year and took a picture of this same spot, all the tracks would be in different places because they're always monkeying with a tax code, which leads us beautifully into our Congress.gov segment, which we do here on FAIRtax Power Radio every week. And even though Congress, again, is still not in session, there are still some trickling of stuff being filed away, including, let's see, where's my first starter? There it is. HR 5102 to amend the Internal Revenue Code to provide matching payments for ABLE, A-B-L-E, ABLE account contributions by certain individuals and for other purposes. Now, I must admit, I did not have time to look up what ABLE accounts are. But apparently, if you're going to put something in this ABLE account, if this bill passes, the government will match it or whatever. So that's provided you're a certain individual or whatever for other purposes.
Well, yeah, it's a state deal. Basically a savings plan, tax advantage savings plan for individuals with disabilities. So it's a good thing.
Oh, okay. Well, that makes sense.
Disability expenses.
But I got a better idea. Why don't you let disabled people and non-disabled people, everybody, just bring home their entire paycheck without any withholding and put more money in their pocket that way?
Yeah, ABLE is an acronym for Achieving a Better Life Experience. Designed
how cool.
With the occurrence of disability before the age of 26 years old. And it's a state-administered program.
Oh, okay. Well, anyway, how about if the government wanted to help those people along, they could just pass a law that gives them some kind of grant or thing, and let's just let them bring home their whole paycheck without any withholding or without any payroll taxes, and they never have to file a tax return again and get their prebate every month. And that would be probably a lot more helpful than anything this bill could do.
Have you ever thought about how, and I won't get off on this too long, but have you ever thought that folks with a little more money in their pocket might be a little more benevolent in their own communities?
Oh, yeah, I would think so.
Or they you're going to get an instant, with the FAIRtax, you're going to get an instant raise because the federal taxes will not be withheld anymore. But at the same time, so you just kind of I wonder about that. Yeah, I know you have more Congress.gov, and I think they're still out of session, are they not?
I think they are. That's why I've only got 2 more. Let's go back to something that our economics professor friend, Professor Kendall, was saying. One of the hard things about an income tax is defining what income is, And this one falls under that category, H.R. 5080, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to exclude certain nurse corps payments from gross income.
Yeah.
I guess nurse corps is something similar to the Peace Corps, where nurses or other medical professionals can donate their services for whatever. And if actually, maybe not donating if you're going to get paid for it, but if you get paid through this nurse corps program, then that doesn't count as gross income.
Correct.
All right. I'll have to ask our daughter about that. She's in the healthcare field, though she's not a nurse, though. But whatever. One more. H.R. 5073, to amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow, get this, intangible drilling and development costs to be taken into account when computing adjusted financial statement income. Got that?
No.
Okay.
Yeah.
One more time. To amend the Internal Revenue Code to allow intangible drilling and development costs to be taken into account when computing adjusted financial statement. That's on the railroad yard on the right here.
Yeah, that's over. Yeah, there.
Yeah, way over. Let's see. That would be that way. Okay, got it. So that's our Congress.gov segment for today. And again, we're a little bit abbreviated. But we probably ought to kind of do a little shorter than we've been doing, so we'd allow more time for what we're doing. You found another just absolutely brilliant article. Last week we talked about an article that was just another pack of straw men, a pack of lies about the FAIRtax that's convincing co-sponsors to withdraw their support. This one is another one that we like to do here on FAIRtax Power Radio. We can illustrate why the IRS should be put out of business.
Besides the fact that they're operating on DOS 1.0 computers, which I understand that they're getting ready to upgrade that. I know they've got to go in progression from DOS to Windows, and then Windows 3.1, and then the networking, and then on up. And of course, you were in computer programming there for a while, and
I was.
And the complexities of upgrading computers and things like that with regard to operating systems. So
yes,
anyway,
that's why our streaming service has been giving us problems of late, because they upgraded to a new version of their software, and the first 2 times we tried to use it, it did not connect to the Facebook account that we streamed this to. Hopefully, we got all that straightened out last week, and we're good, but we'll find out. But anyway, yes, I know all about how upgraded computer systems never work as good as the ones that they replace, at least not right out of the box.
Well, I have this program that allows myself and the volume, the super large, we have an entire floor at AFFT, Americans for Fair Taxation, volunteers that look for articles about the Internal Revenue Service and how sometimes absolutely insane things are going on. And this one I found in an article that came from justthenews.com.
Yes. How do you lose 1 million tax returns?
Well, let me explain, Mr. Paxton, how that actually works. Well,
please do.
The Inspector General, and this article is titled, IRS Can't Find Millions of Tax Records After Botched Transfer. The IRS, so says the Inspector General, has not been conducting mandatory annual inventories of cartridges and advised the agency to restrict access to such records. Well, here's what happens.
All right, what kind of cartridges are you talking about?
Not printer cartridges, not cartridges for machine guns or anything like that. The Internal Revenue Service can't find those returns from a closed California location and thousands more from a Utah facility. The Treasury Inspector General for Tax Administration, according to this article written by Ben Wedden on justthenews.com, was updated a couple of days ago from our recording. It was updated on August 10th. The agency stores old tax records and microfilm cartridges that can contain as many as 2,000 photos on each of those microfilm cartridges.
Microfilm, isn't that kind of the same contemporary technology to DOS 1.0?
And the Polaroid camera that used and the Flintstones that used to have the bird inside that would etch out the picture. Okay, so the Inspector General noted that the tax information in such cartridges is, quote, key information that can be used to commit tax refund fraud identity theft. Okay, key information on these cartridges that are microfilm can be used to commit tax refund fraud identity theft. Cartridges containing individual tax returns must be destroyed after 30 years, while those containing business tax records must be destroyed after 75 years. So they're keeping...
But you could lose them at any time.
Right. Significant deficiencies exist in the IRS's accounting for microfilm backup cartridges. Deficiencies result in the inability of the Internal Revenue Service to account for thousands of microfilm cartridges containing millions of sensitive business and individual tax account records, according to the report from the Treasury Inspector General.
Oh, that's insane.
Released this past month, the report indicated that the watchdog could not locate 168 microfilm cartridges from an Ogden, Utah facility, and was further unable to locate any of the cartridges that ought to have been transferred from Fresno, California to Kansas City, Missouri.
Now, again, 168 doesn't sound like a lot, but remember there are 2,000 records on each one of those cartridges.
Yeah.
So multiply 168 by 2,000, and that's how many tax records you've lost.
Now, in Ogden, Utah, they did locate 7 empty boxes that could have stored the missing cartridges. Now, I'd have to argue, why are you keeping stuff for 30 years when the general public doesn't have to keep their tax returns for 7? Okay, So in total, the watchdog could not locate roughly 4,500 cartridges from 2019 and more than 4,000 from 2018 in the Kansas City facility that should have been transferred from Fresno.
Well, that's considerably more than 168 from wherever that was, Ogden, Utah. Now there's 4,500 in 2019 and 4,000 in 2018. And the Inspector General is just, that's the watchdog that this thing is talking about.
That's right. Now, going on to quote the report from the Inspector General, quote, our review found that required annual inventories, somebody's got to go and look at these things. So our review found that required annual inventories of microfilm cartridges maintained at the Austin, Kansas City, and Ogden tax processing centers. You know how you get the Form 17. It tells you where to send all of your tax returns, whether you have a payment or not. Those required annual inventories at the Austin, Kansas City, and Ogden tax processing centers have not been performed, according to the watchdog report. The report recommended that the Internal Revenue Service properly conduct its inventories and tighten security related to the storage of and access to microfilm cartridges.
Now this reminds me of Steve Hayes's most recent chairman's report. Mm-hmm. He quoted another Inspector General report. Apparently, when the IRS sends large numbers of documents between tax processing centers, say if they're going to send something from Ogden, Utah to Kansas City, that the person originating the package, sending the package, has to include in it a form, I think it was 3210, which the receiver is supposed to fill out and send back to verify that the package got there okay, that everything that was supposed to be in it was in it. And this is just kind of tracking, system that the IRS policy says they're supposed to follow. And the chairman's report this last time said the Inspector General has found out they're not following their own procedure. They're not sending these verification and originator and different copies of this same form to verify that the stuff they're sending isn't getting lost. So they are treating our sensitive tax data with just in such a callous manner that it is prone to be leaked. It is prone to be stolen. They're just not taking proper care of this stuff, which tells me that is a wonderful argument for getting rid of the entire agency and replacing the IRS with the state revenue agencies that will enforce the fair tax.
Well, and I think too that we realize in a number of different ways that the bureaucracy is basically running its own agenda, and not necessarily at the blessing of our elected officials. And I think we've talked about this a little bit before, but sometimes folks that we elect don't want to have their fingerprints on certain activities and things that go on. They make a rule, make a law, and they don't put too much detail into how the bureaucracy is to essentially affect it, make it work, make that law work. So the bureaucracy, and sort of in defense of the bureaucracy, where at whatever level you're at, whatever department you're in, they have to discern what our legislators mean in the law, and the law itself is vague by design, so that and the department gets a hold of it, and somebody's sitting there looking at it. Well, what are we supposed to do with this information? And there's not a specific path to follow. So that means that the departments, the bureaucracy, and the people that are in each one have to sort of translate or write into or try to understand what what our elected representatives are meaning by this particular law that's been supposedly guiding their department. And you put that in the place of the Internal Revenue Service. You say, well, what are we doing to? And as we talk all the time, but specifically, how is the Internal Revenue Service supposed to operate based on reform rules and laws that are made by Congress? And they have to guess in some cases, or they make up their own path to follow. And I think that's where we get into a lot of trouble with some of the entrenchment that we see going on all over Washington, D.C. right now.
So that's why these things have your favorite phrase on them for other purposes. And so
they leave a loophole there. We are the Americans for Fair Taxation. That's the name of the organization that basically operates volunteer organization to promote and push for the fair tax, a tax on consumption that basically eliminates the Internal Revenue Service and the income tax all in one fell swoop and replaces it with something a little more simple. And I think the roadblock that we see, and we talked about that letter last week from an organization that advocates for tax reform, but they don't necessarily want to
tax reform. They don't want real tax reform. They don't want to change the way the system works. They just want to. They don't want to. They just want to tweak parameters within the current system,
right?
And call that tax reform. No, tax reform means that we get rid of the whole concept of taxing income and switch it over to taxing consumption.
Right.
That's tax reform.
The train track that's over Bob's right shoulder versus the train tracks that are over Bob's left shoulder. As you can see, you would probably want something that's nice and smooth and straight where you can see all the way down to the other end, or you have this complex spaghetti looking switch yard that you don't know who's going to throw what where, and if the train's going to come from over on the left or the right to get to. But that's what we're dealing with when we deal with Washington. But folks, it's going to be up to us to get on the phone and call our representatives. If you had 5 or 6 people in your neighborhood or in your town that you knew that you could count on to go get 5 or 6 more people, and y'all all call your representatives, get on the phone, call the switchboard, make sure that you get to someone in that office of your person you voted for, and you say, hey, I voted for Joe Smith, and Representative Smith, he needs to really consider HR 25 and be pleasant and be nice about it, and then get another call and two minutes later and 3 weeks later and continue to make those calls. And eventually the guy that's answering the phone is going to say, hey, he's going to go to his boss, your representative, and he's going to say, hey, we we need to take a look at this. I've had 200 calls logged for HR 25 over the last couple of weeks, and
yes.
that's
all right. Let's replace this with this.
Yeah.
Okay. That work. I don't know if I'm spilling the beans here on something we're not supposed to talk about yet, but there is a new technology well, it used to be called Twitter. It's now called X.
Yeah.
They've got something called Spaces, which is a audio chat room. Used to be an internet chat room. You had to sit there and type out whatever you were going to say. But we are working right now. I'm not sure exactly when it's going to launch, but we are working on having one of the disadvantages of doing our program the way we're doing it now, pre-recording it and then streaming it out. People can talk to each other in the comments as the thing's streaming, but it's hard to carry on a real conversation about the topic at hand. Now, we are looking into using these X or Twitter, whatever you call them, spaces, to talk to people one-on-one about the fair tax. Now, we don't have a date or time when this is going to launch or when it's going to be. Hopefully, it will be on a regular basis where people can find it. But I'm looking forward to helping in that thing and getting online and actually engaging people in conversation about the fair tax.
Yeah, maybe we can get Grover Norquist on there to what it was all about.
Oh, mercy! But
program folks to know what we're talking. It's not an inside joke. It's just that there are letters and there's lots of smoke being blown around to cover the true value of the fair tax. And so I guess, in other words, we can get people that go on to the Twitter Spaces once it gets launched and rolling, and actually engage in conversation and debate. And let's have people that are on there. There are going to be spoilers that are going to jump in there.
Yeah.
Well, moderator that can flush those out and make sure that the conversations are substantive and real. When
it gets launched and rolling, and we're not exactly sure when that's going to be, but we will have to come up with a specific date and time for everything. And we're looking at, we've got volunteers literally all over the country. When there's a 3-hour difference between the East Coast and West Coast time, what's a convenient time for people on one coast is generally not so on the other way. So we are looking at holding these things on both East Coast and West Coast times. We'll have East Coast and West Coast hosts. So if you would like to engage in one of these spaces, we will hopefully be talking to you soon. And no matter where you are living in the country, we should have it on at a time that's convenient for you.
Absolutely. I think it's great. It's good. It's good use of technology, and it's live conversations about important things. And some of the topics are some, I'm not going to editorialize. So some of the topics that are on there are not relevant to what we're talking about as far as the different spaces and accounts that are out there. But there is a lot going on within the Twitter sphere, the X sphere, that facilitate good dialogue and discussion about a number of topics that people are concerned about. And of course, we're HR 25, the fair tax.
Hopefully we can leverage that technology. And at the moment, if I'm not mistaken, you have to be using the cell phone app as opposed to going to a website on a desktop or laptop computer. If you're on a computer, you can get into a space and just listen. But if you want to speak, then you have to do that from your cell phone, and hopefully that technology will advance to both platforms. But anyhow, I'm kind of excited to hear this new technology is going to be used to help spread the word about the fair tax. And when we get it launched, we'll know when our date and time is and invite people. Hopefully they don't use Tuesday at 8 o'clock when our shows run. Well, we can do that, but find some other time, maybe Thursday night or whatever. That's a suggestion. That's not an announcement. But
on a regular basis, and it'll be something that everybody can participate in, everybody. So please let your friends know. The same friends that you tell to call your representatives next week, tomorrow, tell them about what we just talked about the spaces on Twitter, formerly known as Twitter, now X.
Yeah, so yeah, that's going to confuse a lot of people, I'm afraid. The folks are still going to be calling it Twitter for quite a while, but anyhow, I say this will be, I mean, an actual conversation, but it'll just be audio. So if you've had the blowtorch treatment like I've had here, it won't show up on the space. It's just audio conversation about anything you want to, and again, it will be moderated, so that we can keep it on track and we can keep, troublemakers from running in and causing a lot of issues. But this is going to be fun. I'm looking forward to doing it.
Good. That'll be good. Good show today. Hey, that's great to have everybody along, and make sure you share our videos. We're on YouTube, Facebook Live on Tuesday nights at 8 p.m. Go to FAIRtax.org and sign up for the 1040 Club. That's $10.40 a month. It helps the volunteers that work with Americans for Fair Taxation get the word out, get the work done. And of course, you can volunteer too. You can get on there and find out things that you might be able to help participate in to bring about HR 25 as a real and indeed revolutionary change.
Again, I would suggest for anyone who wants to get a good, Reader's Digest version education on the FAIRtax, so we just go to FAIRtax.org, open up the FAQ, and just read it from top to bottom. And then there's also some really good stuff under the research tab if you want to get more in detail about a particular aspect of how the FAIRtax is going to affect things, evasion or agriculture or charitable giving or what have you. A lot of that is there at FAIRtax.org, so we can't steer people to that, too much. And again, if you got a question for us, the FAIRtaxGuys@gmail.com is our email address, or you can leave a comment on the YouTube video, on the Facebook video. We're also on Rumble, so that's not quite as interactive as the other things, but our video archive is on Rumble as well out there. So again, we thank everyone for watching and sharing and being part of the FAIRtax Power Radio audience every week. And hopefully I look forward to coming back at you next week with a little less blowtorch here on me, and we'll go to work for that.
Get some more sun down there in Ocala, Florida.
Yes, I'm in the wrong state to avoid the sun, but anyway. All right, well, I'm afraid that's going to wrap up this edition of FAIRtax Power. Oh, mercy, we've had too much fun already. But again, thank you for watching and listening and sharing. And as always, I'm Bob Paxton.
Bob Scarborough.
We are the FAIRtax Guys, reminding you the FAIRtax is the only truly fair tax, and once you understand it,
you'll demand it.
So, how much will I bring home?
Go ahead.
How much do you make? We'll just say 40,000. Okay, keep it simple, throw out the deductions, all that stuff. So, you got your 40K, right? Now the first 8,000 is going to be taxed at 10%. The 8 to 33,000 is going to be taxed at 15%. And the 33 to 40, of course, is 25%. So that brings your total to $6,345.
Okay, so the average is what?
16%. Okay, and then on top of that, you got Medicare, which is 1.5%, and then of course your Social Security, which is 6.2%. So actually, your new total is $9,405.
Which is
23.65%. You're getting it. You're getting it. Don't even get me started on what the boss has to pay. He's got to pay a portion of your taxes as well, so you don't have to.
Right.